Welcome to creating numerical summaries of data using Excel. What we're going to go through and do is use our Dane County Homes for Sale spreadsheet. When you open that up, again, as I've said in the other videos, you may have an enable editing issue up in the corner here where it says enable editing if it's in blocked out protected mode. So first enable editing, save it down to your desktop or to a flash drive or something like that, or to your drive. Then when we go through and open up the spreadsheet, you'll end up seeing something like this, where it happens to probably open up at the Stoughton page. We want to go and look at the sheet that is for Madison. So you can use these arrows over on the left, pick up for Madison. I scrolled all the way down to the bottom of the data set to row 851, and you'll notice that I put in some extra lines here of data that's not in your file because I wanted you to see this and save some time on the video. What we're going to go through and do is input in various functions for the price data. So these values up through here, all the way from row 851 back up to row 2. And we're going to find the mean, the standard deviation, and the 5-number summary, which is the low value in the data set, also known as the 0th quartile, the 1st quartile, which is the 25th percentile, the median, or the 2nd quartile, the 50th percentile, and then the 3/4 through the data, 35%, the 3rd quartile, or the 100th percentile, 4th quarter, which is the high value in the data set. And then we'll do the same thing over for another column over on the right a little bit for the column that's doing square footage for all the houses for sale. Okay, before we start, we're going to be going and looking at some data arrays, and the way that each of these cells are going and organized is they are organized by column. In this case, for price, it will be in column C, and then by rows, which are numerical. So it's the letter, then the number for each cell address. And if we've got a range, there's going to be a colon between the start and the stop of the data set. It doesn't have to be a column. It could be, any sort of rectangle that you would end up doing in the process. From the top left-hand corner, top left to the bottom right-hand corner for you. We're going to go and have everything in one column at a time, so we're going to deal with it that way. For the mean, we're looking at the average function, since this is mostly used for lay people. So there's several ways of going about doing it. If you're typing in a formula, you can always just type in an equal sign or a plus sign saying we're going into math mode rather than just data entry. And then you can start typing in the word that you think is going to be there, and you'll end up seeing stuff coming up. In this case, Excel's trying to go and help you out by giving you choices that start with letter AV. So we want the average function, so we're going to click on that, and it tells you how it's described, returns the average value with its arguments. And then it'll start telling you average, left parenthesis, and then they'll list off the numbers if there's one or a few of them. We want a whole data range, so we're going to start off with C2 going all the way down to C851, and since it's convenient, I'm starting at the bottom and I'm just going to scroll up to the top. But notice what's happening as I do this. You end up having the data range as one cell to the next cell. So if I go and I scroll all the way up to the top, which takes a second, we're going to go from row 2 all the way down, and then pulling it all the way back down here. We've got that range, and then we're going to hit enter. I'm going to change the format of this so that it's just a number instead of currency, because I'm going to be copying this command over for the other ones, and they're not going to be copied as commands. So if I were to go and copy this command over, just the normal way that you would do it, notice that it goes C2 to 851. The advantage of going through and doing this is when you're copying and pasting something. So let's go through and click on this cell and then copy it, and then we're going to paste it in the next cell over. Note what ends up happening. These numbers don't match up. And the reason why is right here we end up having the range where it's moved it down a little bit. So we copied it down one row, and so it went down one row. It's what's called relative addressing. So whenever you go and copy a command in math mode, it's going to go and take that and move it over to wherever you end up having it. And so what we want to do is break that. So we're going to go back up to what we had before, and we're going to insert dollar signs in front of them, and that's going to give me what's called an absolute cell address rather than a relative cell address. Relative cell addresses are what we normally deal with the letter and then the number afterwards. And when you copy that command over, say, 3 rows and down 4 columns, other way around, over 4 columns and down 3 rows, whatever, then what it'll end up doing is it will go and copy all of the direct addresses relative to where you're going now. So then they'll all have moved over 4 columns and 3 rows, down 3 rows. So in putting these dollar signs in there, you can manually enter it in, or you can hit the F4 key, which will toggle through from one to the other. And then if you take that command and you were to copy it, then what you end up getting is that it's the same. It's referring to the same addresses, in this case C2 to C851, everywhere you copy it. And then if I do that, then I can go through and edit the function and change this to the standard deviation function, S to T for standard deviation. Then you notice that there's a whole bunch of options here. And we want to go and pick just STDEV for standard deviation. The one with the dot P is for populations, and the dot S is for samples, something we'll be talking about in later classes. Though we won't be actually going and using Excel to do it. So if I do that, it will automatically change it so that we can see how much the standard deviation of the data set is. It goes and changes about 196,000 as opposed to the 278,000. So if we wanted to go through and do quartiles, I'm going to go through and edit the function in the row for quartiles. And as I start to go and type in the word quart, it gives me the option and it chooses the quartile. And notice up here it says returns the quartile in the data set, and then it has comma based off of the type of quartile. So what we have to go through and do is put in a comma after the data range, and then it's going to be 0 through 4 for the minimum value, the first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, or the maximum. In this case, I want the first quartile, 0th quartile. And so then the low of the whole data set was 58,800. Now if I copy that command down, I end up having all of them are 58,800, but then I'm going to go through and edit things so that this becomes the first quartile. The next one becomes the second quartile. The third one becomes the third quartile. And the final one becomes the fourth quartile. And so now we have the numerical summaries for the mean, standard deviation, the 5-number summary for the price column. What I'd like to go and do is do the same thing for square footage. So if I were to go and copy these all over down here, that copies it, and because I did the absolute cell addresses, notice that all of these are referring to the C column. So if I go and just click on this data set and then put the cell in here, what it ends up doing is it goes and says, okay, we're doing all the C's, and then I'm just going to go and drag this over. Whoops, let's try it again. I want to just move this data set over until I get to column, I believe it is H. So just to check, I'm going to zip all the way up to the top. Yep, total square footage. That's finished for the data set. So I want to move all of these over to H. Now I could go and change that by just typing in an H here. Notice that that will go and do the whole block, and then we just want that column one at a time. So if I move over just a little bit, you can see that column. Then if I want to go and do this, I can move it around by dragging it over to where I want. And when you drag it over with the way I was just doing it, what you end up having here with this is going to have the same number of cells in it, and it's only just changing the column as we move along. This is probably the quickest way if you're trying to go and change the data set and it has the exact same number in it. So we just want to drag that over, and that gives me the data set for all of the numerical summaries. So now we have the numerical summaries for the mean, standard deviation, the low, first and third quartiles, medians, and highs for both the price data set and the square footage. Hope you had enjoyed the video. Good luck with it all. Take care. Bye-bye.